is a meeting of the Portfolio Committee on Defense. We essentially have two items on the agenda. Is briefing by the AG of South Africa on the status of the review records status, and the briefing from the Department of Military Veterans on their audit action plan. We have also asked the AG to give us feedback on material irregularities. So it means that the first briefing will be in two parts. Is the Brian, what is this now? Is the records review status, as well as the briefing on material irregularities. And then move to take the second briefing by the Department of Military Veterans on their audit action plans. Whilst I'm still on that, you'll see, colleagues, that we have received 3 presentations on the same item from DMV. The last one, we received it this morning. That is on the audit action plans and I was not happy with the first 2 presentations because they were not in the form that they normally present the audit action plans to the Portfolio Committee. And I just did not understand why, when they knew months, more than 2 months, that they will come and present today, that they did not ensure that the presentation meets the standard. It's now more than 3 years we've been together. It's more than 3 years we've been together, and we know how information is presented. And as soon as you start coming up with your own innovation, that takes us nowhere. We have the right to indicate that what you are presenting today, it's not what meets the expectations or the standards. But colleagues, you'll hear when they do the presentation, and you'll see how the two differ from each other. But I thought I should just raise this in case you are also taken aback by the fact that you now do not know which one to refer to. which of the three presentations to refer to. But you'll see that the last one they presented, it's what they presented in October last year. And all we needed is progress report. So you present the same and say from the last time, this is where we were, this is where we are now. If we're at 80%, we're now at 100%. If we had not started the investigation, we now have started the investigation, and the investigation is at this percentage. That's progress we are monitoring, not the jumble saying that they were presenting. So you'll see, and you can easily compare what they are presenting today and what was presented in October, because essentially we're tasked to monitor their audit action plans. We said we'll do it quarterly, and we are doing exactly that. Now, so I did not understand why they did not have this information. It's supposed to be a living document. We have to keep updating. You know, the issues are the same. For any additional audit outcome, you simply just add those issues and still report on the previous year's audit queries, how you have closed them. And we want them closed. We want them removed from the action, from the plan. In other words, dealt with and removed so that we move forward. But for as long as the issues have not been finally resolved, we expect them to still see them on the plan, see where they are and what steps were taken in the last time, so that we monitor if the department is indeed doing what it ought to be doing. So that's I thought I should just come in so that you are able to appreciate the difference between the three. Now, having said that, let me welcome. I was told that the Auditor General will be in the meeting herself. Oh yes, Auditor General, good morning.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, and good morning to the honorable members.
Thank you very much. You are most welcome, Auditor General. It's the first time we meet like this, but I should indicate that your staff has been very good to us. There was never a time when we felt that they were not doing a proper job, or they were not meeting the expectations of the committee. Thank you very much that you took out time to come and do the presentation yourself. I know you present one of the two, but I'll still ask you to still make your remarks on both of them and then indicate which one you would want to elaborate on. Right, without wasting much time, let me welcome the Minister. I don't know if the Minister is in the meeting.
Chair, we have been advised that Minister and Deputy Minister will be joining the meeting a bit later.
I see. All right. All right. We note that. Now, I don't know from the Department of Defense if there are any people in the meeting. Yes. Oh, yes. Mr. Aponzi, you over just who else is in the meeting from your side? Mr. Aponzi, please unmute.
Chair, he has unmuted, but we seem to be having a problem with his audio. but he is unmuted.
Okay. Anyone from AMSCO? I thought I saw AMSCO, even though they were not directly invited, but we always appreciate their presence when we Auditor General come and is at the meeting to do the presentation. If they're not in the meeting, but I would still understand it. AMSCO?
Good morning, Chair. It's Gerard Grobler, CFO. I'm joined here with two of our board members and my colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Oh yes. Who are these board members, CFO?
Chair, we've got Ms. Mashinini and Ms. Squia Gushu, both attending the meeting.
Thank you very much.
The company secretary is also attending. Thank you, Chair.
Also in attendance. Thank you very much. I welcome the two board members and other members of your team. Thank you very much. Anyone from the defense military veterans?
Good morning, Chairperson and members of the portfolio committee. I'm here, Sandy Sasiyengo. I'm the Chief Director responsible for research and policy development. I'm here with my two colleagues, Mr. Mushavela Mufamadi, who is the head of internal audit, and also with Ms. Andiswa Ntlabati, who is the head of risk management in the department. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Was the head of internal audit not a female? I can't remember her name. I'm sorry to use female-male issue.
Yes, correct, Chairperson. It was Ms. Zinhle Kasamba, who was since then, seconded to the post of acting CFO.
Is she in the meeting?
No, she's not, Chairperson.
When you say this one is the head, you mean acting head?
Acting head, correct, yes.
What is this designation?
It's a Deputy Director Internal Audit.
Deputy Director Internal Audit.
Yes.
Okay. And you are, your designation?
It's a Chief Director Research and Policy Development.
Chief Director Policy and
Research and Policy Development.
Research and Policy Development. Thank you very much. Right, I welcome the AG and the team from her office, usually led by Lawrence Van Vieren. So without much ado, let me check if there are any apologies from the committee side, on the committee side.
Chair, we have two apologies for Minister and Deputy Minister who will be joining us during the course of the meeting.
All right.
Those are all the apologies.
Those are the only apologies.
Yes.
And thank you. All right, let me assume that others are present in their representative capacities. Without much ado, I've welcomed the Auditor General. I now invite her to give us her opening remarks. We really appreciate that you are present in person today. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and a warm greeting to yourself, the honorable members. I'd like to greet the colleagues that support the good work of this committee, the leadership and staff of Department of Defense, DMV, as well as AMSCO. And I'd also like to greet the members of Team AGSA. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for granting this opportunity, Chair, to Team AGSA for us to provide feedback on the progress we're making in implementing the material irregularity processes, especially at the Department of Defense, which are processes that we are implementing following the amendment to the Public Audit Act back in 2019. We also will be briefing you on the status of records review today, which is a process that we've put in place to provide insight on the progress that's being made by the auditees in addressing audit matters and to provide you with a set of red flags or early warnings. These engagements, Honourable Chair, certainly help us to strengthen your hand as you exercise your oversight responsibilities. With me are the members of Team AGSA, and as you correctly point out, they are led by Lawrence van Vuuren together with Mbali. These are the people that you are used to interacting with, and I'm pleased to note your positive comments about how they've acquitted themselves as they've worked with you. My visit today is really to share some insight on our progress on the material irregularities, especially at the Department of Defense. Honourable Chair, the role of the AGSA as set out in the Constitution and the Public Audit Act is to audit against the legislation and regulations that are relevant to the management of public finances. We audit and report on how well institutions have complied with the rules that are essentially set by the National Treasury. The functions and operations of the Department of Defense are governed by the Constitution, the Defense Act, as well as the PFMA. And the AGSA audit mandate, as set out in the PAA, focuses on financial and performance management, which are primarily provided for in the PFMA. Within the context of the DOD, the Secretary of Defense is the accounting officer, and that's provided for in the Defense Act, in the Public Service Act, as well as the PFMA. And Section 38 of the PFMA is very clear in setting out the duties and responsibilities of an accounting officer, especially in the area of financial management. And these duties include, in very specific terms, the responsibility to ensure that there is discipline for all members of staff or officials that have something to do with financial management. In the life of the Department of Defense, the terminology would apply to employees and members to whom financial management functions have been delegated, including those relating to procurement and record keeping. As per the PFMA, it is the accounting officer that must maintain a system of internal controls and instill discipline by ensuring that instances of transgressions or even poor performance are appropriately dealt with. The Chief of Defense, in terms of the Defense Act, is responsible for the direct management and administration of the Defense Force and its individual members. As part of the operations of the DOD, members of the force are sometimes delegated functions and responsibilities that are related to financial management and procurement. And these include matters that result in audit findings sometimes. Where there are internal controls breakdowns or transgressions by members of the force when they perform financial management functions, there is uncertainty about who has the right and duty to instill discipline, be it whether it's the accounting officer in the form of the sector or the Chief of Defense. There is uncertainty on to whom we must look to ensure that there is swift, courageous and effective consequence management where there have been transgressions. As the AGSA, we've consistently advised that it is imperative for the Minister serving as the Executive Authority, the SecDef as Accounting Authority, and the Chief of Defense to work together to set a consistent leadership tone about what is acceptable and what is expected of members of the force or members that operate under the direct leadership and supervision of the sector on what it is that's expected of them. We've also advised that this leadership tone be consistently communicated by each of the three members of leadership. We've also similarly advised that the three of them collaborate in dealing with consequence management when things go wrong. In that way, you get the type of environment where there are limited instances of wrongdoing, but importantly, where those things arise, they're acted upon swiftly, consistently, and courageously. With the MI process that was introduced, we've had to now confront the question of who should be held individually liable when there is failure to implement consequence management as set out in the PFMA, whether it is the SecDev as accounting officer or the Chief of Defense. The Public Audit Act provides that when an MI is identified, it is communicated to the accounting authority, the accounting officer, that's now the SecDev, who must then act on it appropriately. Failure to act adequately and appropriately leads to binding remedial action and ultimately a certificate of debt in the name of the accounting officer that failed to exercise their duties as given in the PFMA. In the DOD, there is this conundrum. Do you look to the accounting officer, being the SecDev, or do you look to the Chief of Defense? If a transgression is committed by a member of the force who is accountable to the Chief of Defense, the accounting officer is in no position to discipline them directly. And this directly impacts the work of the AG, because now our ability to exercise the powers granted by the PAA is limited. It's difficult for us to go ahead and issue binding remedial action or even ultimately a certificate of debt. Specifically, we faced this conundrum when we dealt with the MI relating to the procurement of medicines from Cuba. And this is an MI that this committee has been briefed on, and one that I'm aware the committee has been concerned about progress on. In this instance, the findings, recommendations, and even the remedial action given by the public protector have certainly provided some clarity as to who needs to.
Sorry, is the break on my side?
No, even me, Chair.
I think to all of us. We have
All of us.
Oh, thank you very
All
much. Yeah, you were still dealing with the conundrum.
No, it's on the A side.
Vis-a-vis remedial actions. Just go back to that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Honorable Chair and members. Thank you for bringing the meeting to my attention. Thank you. What I was saying is that where there is a transgression that is being committed by a member of the force who is accountable to the Chief of Defense, the accounting officer, being the SecDev, is then in no position to directly discipline them. And this, unfortunately, has a direct negative impact on the ability of the AG to see through the implementation of the powers granted to the office. It's then difficult to go ahead and issue remedial action or a certificate of debt in the name of the accounting officer, being the SecDev. So what we've experienced in the context of the MI relating to the procurement of medicines in the context of COVID, that particular MI, which the committee has been briefed on, which we have reported on in a number of reports since then, that MI we were finding difficult to move on. Fortunately, in this instance, work done by the public protector has provided a very clear set of recommendations and remedial action that then point to specific players in that accountability ecosystem at the Department of Defense. For other MIs, we haven't had that input. So we're going to have to keep thinking about how we deal with the MI processes. I'm bringing this to the attention of this committee, Honorable Chair, because I'm well aware that the committee has been tracking our progress in implementing these powers, tracking our progress on specific MIs of the Department of Defense. It was important for me to bring this to your attention, this legal conundrum that we face. How we want to deal with it is to bring this matter to the attention of the executive, to once again highlight this conundrum, which really finds its expression in how the functions and operations of the DOD are set. And to once again advise that the accountability mechanisms within the Department of Defense be designed and implemented in a manner that's going to result in accountability and good governance. And we believe that the advice we've been given for a while, which says that the three players in that ecosystem, being the minister as executive authority, the accounting authority being the SecDev, and the Chief of Defense, need to set a common tone in terms of what the posture must be when financial management practices are dealt with. They also similarly ought to collaborate in giving effect to appropriate consequences where things go wrong. We will be formally sharing this report with the executive and ultimately bring it to the attention of this committee with some recommendations of how things could work. But I thought it was important, Honorable Chair, at the onset, for me to come and brief this committee in this way, to highlight this conundrum and to once again highlight that the MI process has put into the direct line of vision the need for us to strengthen the accountability mechanisms within the Department of Defense, having due regard for the nature of the operations and the nature of the structures, but still finding ways to ensure that accountability becomes a norm. So thank you very much, Honorable Chair, for this opportunity to brief you in this way. And I hope that I've been able to give you context to what the team will share with you later on in the meeting. I hand back to you.
Thank you very much, AG. Indeed, we have pointed that out in no uncertain terms, that there lies a problem. I agree with you when you say that collaboration amongst the three authorities who are part of the ecosystem, SecDef, Minister, and Chief, will certainly, enhance accountability. But if there is a break, we'll be moving around in circles, as it were, because it's not clear who ultimately must be held to account. It's true that the PFMA rests the accountability, the accountability on the on the accounting officer. The head duties or his duties are clearly spelled out in the PFMA. But in the case where there's this dichotomy, there is a split of responsibilities and of duties and responsibilities clearly assigned by law. It means that one cannot take accountability on behalf of the other, because that's the situation we are faced with. The Defense Act imposes certain duties and responsibilities on the Chief of the South African Defence Force, and that no one else can perform other than the chief. To that extent, he remains accountable on the exercise of those duties, on the performance of those duties, and the exercise of those obligations. The same thing with the SecDef, who now has to keep away from what has been allocated to the chief by law. But where the issue is, which we have not clarified, AG, is it doesn't start there. I think we must take it right back to where it all started. You are an accounting officer and you allocate responsibilities. As you allocate the responsibilities, let me use the term that is normally used in legislation. You delegate responsibilities to your staff and some to members of the force. Now, what we find unacceptable or difficult to explain is you can't then turn around and say, I'm not accountable, because that function is originally yours by law. and you farmed it out, delegated it to members. Not that you were forced to do that, but you delegated it to members of the force. And now to turn around and say, yeah, I've done that, but I can't discipline the fellows. I can't take accountability. You see, because I can't effect consequence management. That's why I failed to, reconcile myself with that position. Yes, it is true. The minister who's part of the ecosystem is ultimately accountable. So he cannot be absorbed from this accountability chain. But when you respond, deal with this aspect where it's not that I understand where the performance of the performance arises from the Defense Act, which gives the responsibility or the duty to the chief, but where the PFMA locates that in your office and you take the decision, in your sober senses, to allocate it to someone in that environment. And in actual fact, you can relocate, you can take that function away from them at any time. If you think, they are not they're out of sight, and allocate it to someone else who is within sight and can actually be brought within your disciplinary processes. That's where the issue is. And therefore, in taking that to its logical conclusion, I would not say, I would not impose a certificate of debt on you. All right, that's me talking, because I'm saying you had the option to do A and B. A, it's within your realm, 100%, and B, it's outside your realm, but you choose B. And then you turn around and say, B, it's not my environment, it's somebody else's environment. If you come back to us on that, when you deal with the responses, I would be happy. Colleagues, I don't know if it is time that we want to deal with the issue of material regulated. Maybe let's open it up, because it's been boggling our mind for a very long time. And let's deal with it. And Mr. Murray?
Thank you very much, Chair. My apologies for joining late due to load shedding. Thank you very much, AG, for your input and the information. I just want to ask you, obviously, you have pointed out the conundrum that we've got, and with the different persons, the minister, the executive, and the chief of the SNDF. Now you say, am I reading you correctly, that you say that they must decide on how the structure must look? And knowing very well that this is a long-standing problem that has not been resolved for many, many years by those three officers. So is there not a responsibility on you as the AG to come up with a strong recommendation of how the structure should be, and that the minister and the accounting officer must report back to you on the structure that will allow for what you are asking and directing? Because eventually, if you have no power and authority to make such a recommendations and hold them accountable, and if they are not doing it and nobody else holds them accountable because of this conundrum, then we are in a repetitive circle, and we will have this been repeated year after year, year after year. So that is my question: whether you, from a legal, accounting, and a legislative point of view, a legal point of view, whether you can make recommendations in terms of how this problem can be dealt with. Similarly with that, you know that we've had for many, many years the problem with the special offense account, the SDA, in terms of where there were certain portions that you couldn't audit and account for because of the sensitivity nature. However, I recall that there was always, it's been reported that there are certain members of the AG with a security clearance that can actually access those transactions. You will recall that at some stage, some of the SDA money was utilized to pay cost of employees, which is obviously, in my opinion, irregular because that is not what SDA, the account is for. So how can we deal with that in terms of your recommendations and binding recommendations, if possible, that legislation must be changed, or that the AG can get access to that information, because we find it year after year that the same qualification comes with regards to the SDA, and we still don't know from an oversight point of view whether everything is in line and is regular. The other question that I have got is, you will recall that the chairperson also referred to feedback in the past where they say that, you know, the authority was delegated to someone else. Now, from your point of view and from the PFA point of view, can you delegate that authority and accountability to anybody else? If not, how do we deal with that? Because if you clear your own mind and say, my conscience is, I delegated, but the person or the persons to whom you are delegating those authority and accountability says, oh, the law doesn't provide with that. Can you delegate that? Or what else should we do? I will stick with that, chairperson, at this stage, because those are the broad principles for me. And if we can't get past those broad principles, we will never find a solution for the more detailed problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. We thought we must bring these issues up front so that as we go into the presentation, we have these at the back of our mind. Maybe let me not ask you to respond to these issues now, because the two issues in the main that we have raised, they will still come up in the presentation that your colleagues will be making. Maybe let me invite them to take us through, but before they take us through, let me recognize the presence of the acting SecDef, Dr. Gamede, and the acting CFO, Mr. Bonzi, and the acting CAE. All right, the acting CAE. I've forgotten, I think I can't remember what CAE is. All right, I cannot recall. I also welcome the Castle Control Board. Is represented by the CFO and Mr. Bond. It's load-shedded. All right, colleagues, let me invite your team, but you will tell me, I think normally Lawrence, who leads the presentation, in fact, it's both Lawrence and Bali, and they would indicate between the two of them, who will then take us through the status of records review. Over to you, Team AG.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members and everyone else in attendance. Chairperson, I just want to maybe check with you. I know that the AG indicated that she might have some time constraints due to other commitments. If it will be possible for you to maybe accommodate her to respond to the questions and then we continue with the presentation, or do you want me to first do the presentation? Please, Chairperson.
Okay, let me just first check what time does she want to exit the platform, so that at least we accommodate it within the time she gives us.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to stay until 11 o'clock if that's okay, Chair. I did leave another meeting so that I could come into this one, but no. I'm happy to stay until 11 o'clock. Will that work for you?
I think it will be fine. How much time, Lawrence, do you need in your presentation so that I see? Yes, sir.
I think what we then can do is, in the presentation that we've submitted to the committee, we've given some background on MIs in general to give the committee a view of what happened in the bigger landscape in the country. But let's then, for the purposes, just focus on slide 8, which deals with the actual status as it is currently in the department. And I think then there would be enough time for engagement with the AG still before 11, if that is.
In other words, we'll focus on DOD for now and leave the rest later.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, let's focus on DOD for now and leave the rest till later to accommodate the 11 o'clock time. All right, over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. If we can just get up with the presentation, and if you can put it fast on slide 8, please. Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, for accommodating us. We really appreciate it. I'm then going to present slide 8, which deals with the status of the MIs in the department. And the first one that we issued was the one that relates to the inventory and asset management. Now, with this MI, since we've issued it, the department actually limited the contract value, and in limiting that, there was actually a financial loss, a likely financial loss that was then prevented to the tune of about 250 million rands. So although we are comfortable now that the financial loss has been prevented, we still find ourselves in the position where the accounting officer and the chief of the SANDF did not implement the remedial actions, specifically in terms of consequence management to both the civilian members as well as the military command members involved, because they were both they were members of and officials from both the secretariat and the military involved in that specific transaction. So in short, then the action or the consequence management has not yet taken place for that material irregularity. The second one deals with the lease payments for the unoccupied buildings in Eco Park, and that was for a value of 108 million rands. So in this case, there was investigations done, and there was a first and a second board of inquiry that was convened. But the second board of inquiry that was convened in December 21 acknowledged that there was a financial and we looked at that report and the recommendations of the board of inquiry, and we have the view that conclusion is not appropriate because members could see this loss occurring over a number of years, and as the Auditor General, we were highlighting this fruitless and wasteful expenditure over a number of years, yet it continued. And therefore, we believe to come to a conclusion that no one should be held accountable is not the appropriate conclusion. going to recommend to the accounting officer on this specific one is that the accounting officer should approach the state law advisors for an opinion from the state law advisors. They should take that Board of Inquiry report, and they should determine and give advice whether any officials can be held accountable or not, because that would be the only way to ultimately determine then from a legal point of view if there's really no basis to hold anyone accountable. The third one deals with the unfair award of the fuel supply. This one, in terms of the Public Audit Act amendments, the Auditor General has referred it for investigation to the Directorate for Priority Crimes, the Hawks, and that investigation is still in progress. So in this case, it is important then that the Hawks finalize the investigation and then ultimately report on their findings. So the Auditor General has got no control over the progress of that specific MI anymore. The next one deals with the personal protective equipment, or PPE, that was procured during COVID. In this case, there was a Board of Inquiry convened on 16 August 2021. The Board of Inquiry again had to be reconvened due to shortcomings identified regarding the first inquiry. And to date, no new Board of Inquiry had been convened, and therefore we have to conclude that this material irregularity is not being addressed adequately. So it's important that a Board of Inquiry is convened again and that this matter is taken to finality. The last one deals with then the Hebron drugs, and the Auditor General also referred to it. And with this one, we know that there was the committee that was appointed by the Minister to do an independent investigation, or so-called Material Task Team. They made certain recommendations that had to be executed. Ultimately, the SAPRA made a final determination that the drugs had to be returned back. So on this MI, it was then also referred to the Public Protector for further investigation, and the Public Protector then also made recommendations which the Auditor General referred to. So on this MI, ultimately, there was a saving or a financial loss prevented of 226 million rands because the drugs was not utilized and was returned, and that payment has not been made. However, one should not lose focus of that. There's still 34 million rands that has been paid to the service provider, and yet those drugs have been returned. But as the AG has indicated, this has now been dealt with also by the Public Protector, and the Public Protector actually then executed remedial action that is binding, and therefore at this point in time there will be no further actions from our side. It's however important that those remedial actions be executed, and we also recommend that the committee request progress on the execution of those remedial action. Thank you, Chairperson. We will take any questions from the committee. Thank you, Chairperson.
Hello, thank you very much. Right, let's then ask in the remaining 11 minutes the Auditor General to respond to the issues that we have raised in relation to the MIs, the 5 MIs that have been presented. Auditor General.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Chairperson, if I may, sorry, AG, on the presentation that was just now done, should we not first pose some questions on that, if there are, so that the AG can respond to them, maybe?
No, I think it's MI. Let's deal with the MI as they were presented by the AG, because she's remaining with 11 minutes now. And if I allow me further thing, we run a risk of not getting the responses from her. Is that what we want?
No, we want responses from her, but then what was the purpose of the presentation then, if we can't answer?
No, we'll still come back. We'll still come back to this presentation that Lawrence has just presented, and other presentation that, and the rest of the presentation that she is yet to give. Advocate, AG.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, honourable members. I think from the presentation that Lawrence has shared with you, honourable Chair and honourable members, it's quite evident that we have made tremendous progress in implementing these MIs and following them up, and also the impact of these MIs is undoubtable. Certainly, you can see the positive impact that our interventions have had. What also remains quite clear from the input that Lawrence shared now and from my inputs earlier on is that the specialized nature of the functions and the operations of the Department of Defense needs to be taken into account in shaping the accountability processes that would then underpin how things run. What we are sharing is an appreciation that there are specialized operations, and the people charged with designing how they ought to operate also ought to be applying themselves to finding the right sort of accountability mechanisms that will set the right culture, set the right tone, instill the right sort of discipline. The audit intervention, as important as what it is, and as enthusiastically as my teams tend to take it on, will have limited impact for as long as there isn't adequate attention to dealing with the specialized nature of this particular auditee. In most auditees, you'll find that the accounting officer is the head of administration and has direct supervision over everybody in that environment. So whomever they deploy to form part of a procurement exercise would still form part of the people that they supervise. In this environment, that is not always the case. One might look to the accounting officer and ask, why is it that you ask people from the defense force to form part of procurement exercises? There may well be a very reasonable operational requirement to do that. And our view is that for as long as the accountability processes are designed to still achieve the operational efficiency and effectiveness on the one hand, and still make sure that there are proper consequences when things go wrong. Our view is that those need to be designed taking into account the very specialized nature of that environment. The nature of the PAA and the PFMA do have limitations, especially in this environment. And so our recommendations, which we have given over time, remain that the three people in the leadership of this department ought to design and implement the appropriate mechanisms that will still achieve both imperatives: efficiency and effectiveness on mandate on the one hand, which is critical, and accountability on the other. The Constitution is very clear. One doesn't get to choose or opt out of either one of those two things. You've got to be performing on your mandate and on your function in a way that's efficient and effective still, and also drive accountability and transparency in the environment. So our report deals with that, Honourable Chair, and it was really a call to say, in your engagement with us, but also with the department, and I'm glad to see that the Minister is on the call now. In your engagement with the department, please have a look at the type of commitments that will still achieve both imperatives in a way that's sustainable. And that's really the plea, Honorable Chair. There is absolutely no doubt about the commitment of my office to implement these powers or about the effectiveness of how we've done it up until now. What we see as this conundrum is something that is an opportunity for us to deal with accountability mechanisms within the department in a way that is sustainable for the future. I hope I've answered the questions. There was one from Honorable Murray around the audit of the Special Defense account. The security clearances for members of Team AGSA that are charged with this audit are underway. They tend to be very slow, and I think that's a feature across different parts of the system. However, when they do come through, we're able to deploy people onto the audits that are able to do this work. So that situation is improving, but I think we have to continue to watch it so that those improvements genuinely continue on the trend that we are seeing. It is absolutely imperative that one, we maintain the credibility of these operations and still drive accountability and transparency, and we make sure that we're constantly balancing these two imperatives. I hope I've answered the questions, Honorable Chair.
Right, thank you very much. You have, Mr. Murray, there's 5 minutes left. Please raise your issues, knowing that if you still want the response from the AG, you must share the 5 minutes, the remaining 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Want to say something?
Yeah, just maybe quickly, I'm prepared to leave my questions for Lawrence van Vuren. I mean, he has been very adequately and able, to respond to that in the past. I just want to make sure, if it is something, because it was part of his presentation, or my question is from that presentation. Do you want me to proceed to ask the question?
Yes, only if
Okay.
it is. So look, okay, listen to this. It's not for the ears of the AG. You don't expect the AG to respond. So I just want to deal with the AG issue now.
Okay. Let's then leave my questions, and I'll ask. I'll put it to Lawrence later on,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay.
Let me thank you, AG, for your presence and the way you have dealt with the issues this afternoon. Indeed, this remains the issue, but once again, you said in the absence of any legislative changes to deal with this conundrum, your appeal is to the minister, the SecDef, and the accounting officer to collaborate in enforcing accountability and effecting consequence management. And you say that knowing that the minister has the ultimate accountability as the supervising authority in any department. So we wish that message will one day be translated into action that produces the results. The results is enhancing performance and improving accountability. The two are the two sides of the same coin. If there's no accountability, forget about the performance enhancement. So that's the reason why we keep emphasizing on this point as the portfolio committee. And thank you very much. And your team, as I said, is doing a good job. They are actually, highlighting or bringing into our attention what you would consider, the blind side. I think I'm correct, areas, and we have not lost sight of them, and each time when they come up, we do a follow-up on them. Your last word before you exit, AG.
Thank you very much, Chair. Before I leave you in the capable hands of Team AGSA, thank you for the opportunity to engage with you in this way. I've certainly enjoyed the interactions, and I've listened carefully to your inputs and questions. And I want to thank you once again, Honorable Chair, you and your committee, for the support you give to Team AGSA and the advancement of our work. And I hope that over time we'll continue to go from strength to strength, both in the work we do, but also in the work that you do as well. May I wish you all the very best for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you, Chair. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, AG. And you are now free to exit. I welcome the Minister. I heard that the Minister has joined the meeting. Minister, good morning.
Good morning, Chair.
Thank you very much. You are welcome. All right. Now let's go back to, yes, is the Deputy Minister in the meeting? I thought I heard his voice. All right. Now let's then go back to Lawrence. Lawrence, you may then start from the beginning, complete the presentation, and then we'll then deal with the questions afterwards. Over to you, sir.
Chairperson, just before you go, can we say to the Minister, welcome back. We are glad that you're still with us.
Thank you very much. Indeed, you were all glad. Over to you, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, and good morning also to Minister and Deputy Minister. Chairperson, let me then start with the first part of the presentation. What we've done is in slide 4, we've just highlighted again for the committee the definition of a material irregularity and the various options that can be exercised when a material irregularity has been identified, and the first one then being that it can be referred to a public body, and that we've done in the case of the fuel at Department of Defence. There can be recommendations made in the audit report to resolve the material irregularity. We've done that with some of the material irregularities. For instance, the one on the lease payments, and then we can also issue binding remedial action. That has been done in the case of the asset management one, and then lastly, there's the certificate of debt that can be issued. I'm not going to speak to slide 5 in detail, because we've also discussed this during the DRRR sessions. And I think it's been emphasized again earlier also by the Auditor General that once we've identified material irregularities, whether we refer it or whether we deal with it ourselves, it is important that there's executive oversight on the implementation of the material irregularities and the recommendations and the remedial action. And then of course we acknowledge that this portfolio committee exercise oversight from a portfolio committee point of view over all these material irregularities on a very regular basis. The slide 6 and 7 then deals with the material irregularities in a bit bigger context. It's just to give the committee some insights into what does it look like if we look at what we call the PFMA cycle. What does it look like if we look at all the national and provincial departments and national and provincial public entities? And this statistics that I'm giving you now is up until August of last year. And for that cycle, what we call the 21-22 cycle, there was 95 auditees that was, there was 202 auditees that was included. You will recall that we did not immediately include all the auditees in the MI definition. We had a staged approach. We started off then with a certain number, and then in 2021 it was 95. And then we upped that number to 202 auditees for the 21-22 audits that we've done. So initially what we've noted in the first years when we issued these material irregularities, we noted that there was a a slow response from the accounting officers and the accounting authorities to give attention to these material irregularities. But what we've noted now is that there's a change in the environment, and that the accounting officers and accounting authorities in many cases are now actually giving the required action to these AMIs that are raised by the Auditor General with a view to resolve them. If we then look at the statistics in the table below, we will see that when we give it in rand value. So if you look at the MIs that we've identified, it's for 636 million rand. The accounting officers or authorities actually took action to prevent the losses. So there's losses being prevented of 636 million rands. There's 509 million rands, which is actually in the process of being recovered by accounting officers and accounting authorities. There's 14 million rands that has actually been recovered. We then look at on the other side, we will see that in 39 instances, accounting officers or accounting authorities has changed internal controls to prevent a reoccurrence of material irregularities. In 36 cases, responsible officials were identified and disciplinary processes were actually completed or in process. In 15 cases, there's fraud or criminal investigations that are ongoing, and in 5 cases, the contracts with the suppliers were actually stopped. Slide 7 then just gives us a indication of the 179 material irregularities that we've identified up until 31 August 2022. If we add all of those up, it gives us an estimated financial loss of 12 billion rand. And if we then categorize them, just to give an indication of in which areas do we find most of these irregularities, you will note that most of them are in the procurement and payment environment, and there's just over 100 of them in the 3 different categories: non-compliance with procurement processes, uneconomical procurement resulting in overpricing, and payment for goods or services which has actually not been delivered or poor quality, or which is not in line with the various contracts. You will see that we've also found about 20 MIs in the resource management environment. That is where assets are not safeguarded, and which results in losses or insufficient use of resource, inefficient use of resources. Then we also focus on revenue when we audit, and you will see that there was 2 cases where we've issued MIs where revenue was not billed, 4 cases where debt was not recovered, and 1 instance where the money was actually not deposited in the relevant bank account. Then you'll see that we also raise material irregularities when there's interest and penalties that are being paid, and that typically happens when payment is not made in time, and then the various service providers charge interest, and then there's other instances as well where there's certain requirements in terms of, for instance, the Income Tax Act, where certain returns must be done by a certain timeline, and if it's not done, then there's penalties and interest levied. So many of the other cases relate to that. Then there's fraud issues. You will see that there's 5 fraud related ones that we've highlighted. There's 1 for misuse of a material public resource, and there's 9 which we've issued, which falls under the part of the definition that deals with harm to the public institution, and those 9 actually relate to MIs that the Auditor General have issued because those entities did not submit their financial statements. Chairperson, I will then for now hand back to yourself if there's any questions for us on this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, Mr. Van Vuuren, for your presentation. Colleagues, now is the opportunity for us to deal with the issues. Mr. Murray, you can see your hand. Let me just check who else. Sorry, just check who else has his hand up. Just hold. It's only your hand so far. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Van Vuuren, for always your proper work and proper oversight. It's obviously much appreciated. I want to go back to your presentation and specifically deal with 3 cases. The one is on your page 9, which is that transaction about the Cuban drugs, and specifically where you are saying that there has been money being recovered. Now, I want to get your response. Last year in October, I posed a question to the minister, a written question, with regards to recovery of any losses. Her response to me was the SANDF did not incur any loss from the aforementioned agreement. That's now Tusano, including the drugs. So clearly we've got a situation where you say it will be recovered. Losses must be recovered, at least that's 34 million rand. And the minister clearly said, sorry, there's no losses. What happens in a case like that? The public protector's remedial action has been, you are saying it's binding. We know that it should have been done within a specific time, and we know it was not done in that time. There was, I think, still no remedial action on those binding recommendations. So what is then the next step? Have you got any obligations to ensure that those money has been recovered, and if not, what then? Then I also want to ask you on you will recall your previous presentations to us with regards to the whole project Tusano, and where you say that the whole project Tusano is a problem and it needs to be regularized. You've had a huge presentation to us on Tusano, and that was in March last year. According to feedback from the minister and the department, it is not necessary for them to do anything at this stage. Also because the contract will be running out in 2025. So what do we need to do where you have made certain findings and recommendations, and clearly the department is of a different view? The third matter that I want to raise with you is the St. George's Hotel transaction. You will recall that I think you have also reported on that, and you will recall that also in a written question to me by the minister, she confirmed that PFMA requirements, regulations were not followed. And I think your feedback was that they need to be dealt with. So we know at this stage it has not been dealt with still. So what is our position in this regard, and your obligations and responsibilities in this regard, and what does the minister have to do, or what can she ignore if she wants to ignore this? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mutle.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to everyone on the platform. I just have one question, Chair, and it's around an issue that Lawrence has raised on the investigation, the first and the second investigation done by the appointed Board of Inquiry to deal with the Eco Park matter, where the Board of Inquiry made recommendations that the AG is not convinced that the matter can be closed at that. But you see, I just want us to avoid a situation where we say the department must go and re-investigate or appoint another Board of Inquiry, which will then give the same result. I'm not sure how expensive those exercises are for the department, because at the end, if you reappoint the same board over and over again, but it gives you the same result, we must be wary of the resources that are used, which do not necessarily give us the outcome that we envisage. The engagement that the AG had with the department, what were those engagement, and to what an extent has the department given the AG confidence that if they re-investigate again, they will arrive at a different determination, for an example. But to make things even easier, what is the expectation of the AG even before they re-investigate? Because I mean, if we know we can preempt the outcome, let's just be frank with each other to say, no, the Board of Inquiry was wrong. As he has alluded, there should be some people who are responsible, and these are the people who should then take responsibility for those actions. It can't be that that you arrive at the determination that no one will be held liable for those losses that the department has incurred. But the essence of my question, how do we avoid a situation where we end up with the same recommendation or the same outcome out of a third Board of Inquiry that will leave us without any proper solution, as the AG has indicated? And if the AG has got guidance that he can provide to the department, it must be done so that as and when they do that, they know where to look into. Thank you very much.
Right. It doesn't look like there's any other thing to say.
Looks like if we lost connection now.
Yeah, I thought it was on my side, but it seems like it is with the chairperson. Honorable Muti, are you online?
I'm here. I think the chair has lost, yeah, but he's back. I can see he's in the meeting.
Maybe he's just muted. Otherwise, my suggestion is to you that you must direct Mr. Van Vuren to proceed. Thank you.
No, it's fine. Mr. Van Vuren, you can go ahead and respond to those questions. I think the chair will be back shortly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Thabo and Mr. Murray. I'm back. Thank you very much. You may go ahead, Mr. Van der Veeren. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'm glad you're back. Let me start off with the last question about the Eco Park matter. So there was actually 2 investigations done. One was done by the Secretary of Defense, and then there was one done on the military side by a board of inquiry. And I think it's important that one look at both of those investigations. So our recommended way forward on this one is because, as the members rightfully indicated, the Auditor General has evaluated the last, well, actually, we have evaluated both reports, but we are of the view that the last one, which came to the final conclusion that no one can be held accountable, is not the appropriate conclusion. The way forward on this is then that we're going to write to the Secretary of Defense and request the Secretary of Defense to refer this matter to the state law advisors, because it now becomes a question of are the individuals, can the individuals be held responsible in law? And that is something which the state law advisors will then be able to pronounce on. So they will then take the set of facts, and they will then have to make a determination ultimately, can someone be held personally liable for this loss? And I think then we will then most probably take it from there on in terms of what the outcome is of that feedback from the state law advisor. So it's an independent party. They're the legal experts in the country, and I think we think that they are the most appropriate then to advise on the way forward. And if the conclusion is that no one can be held accountable, then we can leave it there. I think that would then also resolve the difference of view between ourselves and the department. The questions with regard to the Hebron drugs. So all the drugs was returned, but there was a payment of about 34 million rands made to the service provider, but all the drugs has been returned. So effectively, the department has paid 34 million rand for something it does not have, and therefore our view is that 34 million rand must still be resolved. It should ideally still be recovered from the service provider because the drugs has been returned. And yes, there's a contract in place, and therefore it's also very important that legal advice being sought by the department in terms of the contract, whether that money can be recovered or not, and if there's then a loss that has to be suffered by the department, if it cannot be recovered, then the department should once again determine whether any individuals is liable in the department for this 34 million rands. And again, the appropriate way would be for the department then to approach the state law advisors for legal advice on whether this 34 million rand can be recovered from any individual or not. With regard to Project Tusano, yes, our view is that the whole Project Tusano is irregular expenditure, since the correct supply chain management procedures have not been followed. And the department is disclosing it as irregular expenditure. The PFMA then determines that there should be an investigation by the accounting officer, that it should be disclosed, and appropriate action should be taken. But National Treasury has also issued a framework that deals with irregular expenditure. And that framework also gives guidance on how to deal with irregular expenditure. So the department can approach National Treasury on this specific irregular expenditure in terms of that framework. Let's say, for instance, the department would like National Treasury to condone it, then the department can approach National Treasury for condonement, or if it's not condoned, then ultimately the framework determines after all the processes has been followed that the accounting officer can then remove it from the financial statements. But there's a number of specific requirements that must first be met before that can be done. So at this point in time, it is regarded as irregular expenditure, and the various sections of the PFMA should still be applied to that. When it comes to the St. George's Hotel, similar, the procurement process of the St. George's Hotel was not done in accordance with the requirements of the PFMA and Treasury prescripts, and therefore it is also regarded as irregular expenditure. And as far as I can remember, also disclosed as such in the financial statements. Again, then there is a need to follow the prescripts of the PFMA to investigate it and to determine if anyone should be held accountable for not following the correct procedures. In this case of the St. George's Hotel, it does not necessarily mean that there's a financial loss. It means that the right processes have not been followed, and then the investigation ultimately should be able to determine if there's a financial loss. Let's say there would have been premises that would have been cheaper, then that could result in a financial loss. Chairperson, I think I will hand back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van Vuuren. Let's then complete the presentation. I don't know, there is the status of records review that has not yet been presented. The focus so far has been on material irregularity. Who's taking us through that one? Status of records review, Mr. Van Vuuren?
Chairperson, can I just have one?
Sorry, Mr. Mare. Mr. Van Vuuren, you're on the platform.
Just for clarity.
Mbali will be taking us through the status of records review. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Mare.
Sorry, my apologies, Chair. Just for clarity for Mr. Van Vuuren, thank you for your feedback, and it's much appreciated. Now, for us, what can we do if there are no compliances to what you have said that should be followed, and the application to either the state law advisor or National Treasury is not done? Where do that leave us in terms of oversight and making sure that they will be in compliance or brought into compliance? What can we do, or must we just sit back and say it's out of our hands? Thank you.
I thought that you know what you ought to be doing as members of Parliament. That is clearly stated in the Constitution and the rules of Parliament. Unless I don't understand the question, I think it's not going to be fair for Mr. Van Vuuren to tell us how we must perform our responsibility. I think we're conflating the roles. All right, let's then welcome the second presentation. Mbali Tsotet is going to take us through. Over to Mbali.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good morning to you, and good morning to honorable members. Greetings also to the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans and all the colleagues from Defense and Military Veterans. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. I will move straight to the next slide, which talks about our mandate as the Office of the Auditor General of South Africa. We exist to strengthen this country's democracy by enabling oversight, accountability, and governance in the public sector through the audit work that we do, and thereby building public confidence. The next slide, Chairperson, deals with the accountability ecosystem. We are in the process of implementing our new strategy, which is called Culture Shift 2030. And with this new strategy, we are aiming to have a more direct and constant impact on the lived experiences of the citizens of this country. And therefore, we have then brought up this concept of accountability ecosystem because we believe that if all the role players do what is required of them, whether it's in terms of legislation or it's in terms of their performance contracts or agreements, that we can be able to ensure that the service delivery does take place and that the citizens of this country do benefit from the democracy. So it's important that we always look at the roles and ensure that the role players are indeed able to exercise their roles accordingly. In this regard, we highlight on the left-hand side the responsibilities of the decision makers, being management, the accounting officer, and the officials, but also highlighting the role that must be played by internal audit and audit committee as independent assurance providers to ensure that the control environment is strengthened. Because if the control environment is strong, then the departments or entities are able then to provide credible reports and they are able to deliver on their mandates. And then on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, it's all then the role players when it comes to oversight, including this committee. And that is why we are here today, Chair, to give insights from the status of records review so that we can support you in your work around oversight. We also include ourselves as AGSA in this accountability ecosystem because if we to provide insights and we are able to influence the role players to do what is necessary, then we can be able to ensure that the mandates of the departments and entities are delivered, again, with the aim of ensuring that there's service delivery for the citizens of this country. But we are saying that if we can't influence or that influence is ignored, we will then use our enforcement powers in the area of the MI process. I then move on, Chair, to the actual status of records review. We have done it for all the entities within the defense portfolio. Let me say 3, not all, because the Castle Control Board was not one of them. So we've done it for defense, DMV, as well as Arms Corps. But in this presentation, we only focusing on the Department of Defense as well as military veterans. So at a high level, the status of records review is where we look back in terms of the action plans that have been developed by the departments to ensure that there is movements towards addressing the audit findings that we reported in the prior year, with the aim of ensuring that by the time they submit the financial statements, those matters have been addressed. So we also rate then the focus areas to indicate if there were concerns that we identified or there's intervention required. And those are the areas that we are going to focus on as we bring you the feedback on this review. Starting off then with the Department of Defense, we looked at the 8 focus areas, and we will note that there are 5 focus areas that are in the red, meaning that immediate intervention is required to prevent audit failure. So those are around oversight, financial management, procurement and contract management, compliance and IT management. I will then take you through some of the insights, particularly around those areas. When you look at oversight and monitoring, the first concern that we are raising is essentially around the audit action plans. So our assessment was that the department has not then ensured that the action plans are implemented such that they can be able to execute the actions timelessly to address the internal controls that led to prior year's audit findings. We also looked at the progress that was made in this regard to reach that conclusion, wherein we noted that out of the 239 matters that we identified where actions had to be developed, only 19 actions had been implemented at the time of our review, which was the end of November, and then 65 were still in progress. And there were 155 items where there was limited progress or no actions had been made. We also highlighted the issue around internal audit as one of the key role players on the accountability ecosystem, that there's a big vacancy rate in the internal audit division. and therefore there are not sufficient resources to ensure that they can review the internal controls within the department with the view of giving recommendations to the accounting officer to deal with those. And also the position of the Chief Audit Executive has been vacant for a period exceeding 36 months. And this is a critical position within the internal audit unit. On IT management, we have looked at the action plans that have been provided to deal with all the IT findings that we reported. We had a concern in that some of the areas that we had identified around IT governance, security management, and user access management, there were no actions included to deal with those matters for this year under review. So there is a risk then that the same issues may come up again when we do the final audit. Then moving on to financial management, the Department of Defense was qualified in the prior year. There were 4 qualification areas around assets relating to existence of assets, completeness of assets, the evaluation, as well as additions that could not be confirmed. So we have assessed then the actions that have been taken by management to address these findings. And at the time of our review, the department was still in the process of ensuring that they address all the findings before the end of the financial year. So if these findings then are not addressed by then, there's still a risk that it may have a negative impact on the audit outcome for 2022-23 financial year. Then another issue of qualification was on irregular expenditure, and the department has been qualified on irregular expenditure for the last 4 financial years around the completeness of the irregular expenditure that is being disclosed in the financial statements, because there are no adequate systems to detect, record, and appropriately deal with this expenditure in the financial statements. So in the current year, similar to last year, internal audit has continued to review procurement processes with the aim of assisting the department to identify all the instances of irregular expenditure. But that process was still continuing at the time of our review. And looking at the number of the procurement units, there's a risk that they may not be able to identify all the non-compliance, and therefore irregular disclose may still not be complete. And then again, we want to emphasize, Chairperson and honorable members, that the critical area that really needs to be addressed when it comes to irregular expenditure is the improvement of internal controls within the procurement units to prevent incurring any further irregular expenditure. Because if the internal controls are not improved, the department may still incur irregular expenditure. It can be quantified on the other hand, but on the other, if the controls are not fixed, the department will continuously incur irregular expenditure. I move on, Chair, to procurement and contract management, which directly links with the section on irregular expenditure, because most of this irregular expenditure is due to non-compliance with procurement processes. So our review of the improvement around internal controls, we noted that the action plans had been put in place, but in some of them, the due date were the end of March 2023, which is a concern then that for the better part of the financial year, those controls will not be in place. We noted some irregular expenditure that was disclosed in the financials of 48.5 million, but in the main that this is relating to previous year contracts and not really new instances identified for the under review. Again, an indication that the department has not implemented processes to identify issues relating to irregular expenditure. Lastly, in that area, we also again highlight the fact that the supply chain management function, which is procurement, it remains located within logistics environment, which is contrary to the requirement of Treasury Regulation 16A, which indicates that it must reside within the direction of the Chief Financial Officer. Then moving on to compliance management, the first area of concern that we identified is around the issue of making payments within 30 days, we did identify some instances where the department is not making payments within 30 days. And this is mainly due to the legacy financial systems that are used by the department. This area was also a matter that we reported on previously. Then looking at irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, the amounts are ranging at 15.2 billion for irregular expenditure, which is the closing balance at that point in time. But our focus was on the progress that is being made in terms of dealing with irregular expenditure, because the PFMA requires that once identified, it must be investigated and the necessary actions be taken by the accounting officer. So if we analyze the cases and the progress of investigations, we are concerned that for fruitless and wasteful expenditure, for 52% of the cases, no investigations have been started, whilst for irregular expenditure, this amounts to 57%. So meaning that there's no process started to investigate to ensure that the right steps can be taken against those that were involved in those irregularities. Then moving on to the next slide, it still deals with compliance management, but in this regard, we continue to focus on some of the cases relating to irregular expenditure, which have been investigated. However, the recommendations from the various reports have not been implemented by the department. So if you look at the case number 1 relates to an asset management contract that was concluded in 2016, it was investigated, but no further progress has been taken in terms of implementing the recommendations. The second one dealing with a contract that was concluded in 2019, again, the recommended actions have not been implemented by the department. The last one deals with the issue of one military hospital. There was a forensic investigation, and the department has since referred the matter to the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigations, the Hawks for further investigation. However, we want to also bring to your attention that our area of concern was around further recommendations that were made by a board of inquiry with regard to medical equipment that was bought and not utilized because the repairs were not concluded at one military hospital. So the recommendations included the disposal of these assets by the department, and this was not done. Chairperson, that's the conclusion on the Department of Defense. I then move to the status of records review for the Department of Military Veterans as at 31 December 2022. If we look at the focus areas at a high level, there are 2 areas that require immediate intervention. And then all the other areas, we have concerns that we also want to share with you as the committee. Starting off with financial management, which, as I've indicated, is an area that requires immediate intervention. Firstly, we did look at the action plans that the department has prepared to address the findings that we reported previously. And we feel that these action plans are not adequate because in our review of the interim financial statements, we did note some material errors in those financial statements. So the department needs to ensure that the actions that are being implemented will clearly deal with the issues of material statements. We also note the issue of the logis system, which is still not functional. At this point in time, only one module was implemented which relates to supply chain management, and the one that is dealing with assets has not yet been implemented. And the department just indicated that this is due to vacancy challenges. So by using an Excel to prepare an asset register, there's likely that there will be errors around the asset register. Then another area of concern on financial management is around the use of consultants by the department, which we appointed last year to prepare the financial statements for a period of 2 years. What we're raising is that despite the fact that the department made use of consultants, but there were still material misstatements that we identified and had to be adjusted for in the financial statement. So it's important that the department ensures that there is value for money from using the consultants. On the area of performance management, last year we had a number of findings on performance management whereby we could not confirm the accuracy or even validity of the indicators and the achievements that were reported in the annual performance report. So our concerns in that area is that based on our review of the quotas that were reported and comparisons with the supporting schedules, we noted that there were still differences between the two. So there is a risk that when we audit during the final audit, there are likely then again to be errors in the reported achievements for the department. We also noted that the department did not present its information in the APP for the year under review in line with the guidelines from the DPME revised framework. Then moving on to matters of compliance management within the DMV, the first area that we noted was around investigations relating to reported fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So in this area, there were no investigations that had been started to address fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Management did indicate that the matter was in progress. However, they were not able to provide evidence to support what progress was being made by the department in this regard. On irregular expenditure, there were some recommendations made by an investigation report on steps that must be taken against officials that permitted irregular expenditure. We noted that actions have not been taken against the rest of the officials that are highlighted by the report, except from the 4 senior officials that are placed on suspension. There are also areas of concern around payments within 30 days for DMV, and this is in the main because the department does not have an effective invoice tracking system, with the result then that payments are not made within 30 days, which might result in interest and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. On human resource management, the department structure is still under review. It has been under review for a number of years without being concluded. So as a result, the department has appointed 43 additional staff members to supplement the current structure of 169 officials. So it is our recommendation that the structure must be finalized without delay. We're also noting a number of key vacant positions within the department, which needs to be filled to address service delivery challenges within the department and also to maintain stability within leadership. Some of these key positions are within the area of DDGs, so it's important that they need to be filled to maintain that stability at leadership level. Then the other point is around the suspensions of the 4 senior managers, as mentioned earlier, in that the period now that has lapsed is over 18 months, which further then affects the department in terms of the area of ensuring that the service delivery, because some of the key suspended officials are within Program 4, which is one of the core programs of the department. When we did our review, Chair, we did inquire about the status of the disciplinary hearings against the suspended officials, and no progress reports could be provided by the department. Then moving on to oversight and monitoring with our focus on audit committee and internal audit, we noted that the term of the audit committee came to an end in April 2022. And currently the department is sharing the audit committee with the Department of Defense. And this sharing arrangement still needs to be approved by National Treasury and the Executive Authority as required in the regulations. The audit committee is a critical role player in the accountability ecosystem. Therefore, it's important that it is fully operational and then this issue of the vacancy in the audit committee needs to be fixed with immediate effect. Then looking at internal audit function, we note that the internal audit function has not completed any other work in their plan except for the review of last year's financial statements. And this is despite the internal audit being capacitated with consultants for this year, 2022-23. Moving on to action plans, our assessment regarding the review of the action plans was that the department does not have a defined process to ensure that they monitor the implementation of the action plans. The department did not take appropriate action to ensure that all the plans that were required to address the findings we identified in the prior year are implemented on time. In some instances, we noted that the identified control deficiencies did not have any action plans attached to them, which then raises the risk of the matters recurring again in the current financial year. Lastly, on the area of financial health, we looked at the third quarter financial statements, the spending patterns, and against the service delivery programs. And we noted that the service delivery programs were behind with their spending. As of Q3, when we did the review, the department had only spent 57.3% of the total budget. And we noted that majority of the underspending was on the socio-economic support program, which is one of the key programs within the department, as it takes up 55% of the budget. So we're concerned that this could have a negative impact on the service delivery to military veterans. Then there's the status of records review for the two departments. Then, Chair, on DMV, we also did some work in terms of doing a proactive review of the annual performance plan for 2023-24. And the objectives of the review were in the main to understand the process that was followed by management in preparing and or revising the strategic plan, and also to determine whether the prior findings that we raised around measurability, whether they have now been addressed with the new APP, and again to assess measurability, relevance and quality of the indicators that are included in the 23-24 APP. This was done to enable then the accounting officer and the executive authority to ensure that the proactive findings are addressed in the APP prior to it being finalized. We highlight some of the findings that we identified out of this review, which needs to be addressed before the plan is finalized. We noted that in some instances, the source of data, which is the originating source document, and the means of verification for some of the indicators were not clearly described as required in the technical indicator description. And then in some cases, some of the indicators, the source of data was not specific to indicate where the information will be collected from later on when the department prepares its quarterly reporting, which will result then in issues around measurability or even supporting the achievements that will be reported by the department. So, Chairperson, we also just want to highlight some focus areas for the portfolio committee as you review the APPs, which includes ensuring that the performance indicators and targets relate logically and directly towards realization of the strategic goals and objectives of the departments and entities. Ensuring that the medium-term priorities are reflected in the institution's strategic plans and APPs. And also to compare performance against budgets and annual performance plans to determine whether the departments are providing value for money as they deliver on their mandate. Chairperson, as I conclude, we go back to the recommendations and commitments that we discussed with the committee. In particular, it was in an area of ensuring that the committee does track commitments made by the accounting officers and executive authority to implement the corrective actions, to engage all the role players within the accountability ecosystem, and to request regular feedback on the issues of consequence management, in particular long outstanding cases of investigations, and also to monitor the accountability ecosystem to ensure that all role players do provide assurance and exercise their roles with the aim of improving audit outcomes and ensuring that there is service delivery within this portfolio. And lastly, to assess the departments and public entities' plans to ensure that auditees do plan and deliver in line with their respective mandates. Thank you, Chairperson.
My apologies. Thank you very much, Mbali, for the presentation. Very clear and concerning in that, you know, there is no responsiveness to some of the issues identified in the audit outcomes, especially those that land the department on repeat audit findings. Now, let's then deal with the report as presented, colleagues. I just want to note hence, so far is Mr. Mare sent. Let me welcome the DM, the Deputy Minister. We had received that he would join, he had some commitment in the morning and he would join the meeting a bit late. And both of them, the Minister and the Deputy Minister, are now in the meeting. I once again welcome both of them. Right,
Thank
Mr.
you
Mare?
very much, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mare? I can't hear you, Mr. Mare. I don't know. Is it me who's...
Mr. Mare is muted, Chair.
Oh, Mr. Mare is muted. Mr. Mare? Shelembe, please switch off your mic, please. All right. So, colleagues, so this is the latest on the review records. Yes, Mr. Mare. All right, I think we lost him. Okay. Mbali and Mr. Van Vieren, we've just discussed the issues on military material, what you call irregularity, and that if for operational efficiencies and effectiveness, the department may actually allocate or delegate certain responsibilities to the defense command management. And that obviously that then brings up the question that when there are issues of discipline, the accounting officer sector would be barred from entering into that space, because only the chief of the defense force may discipline a defense force member. I think we accepted that. we accepted that as critical for the functioning. Operational efficiencies and effectiveness is critical for the functioning of the department, that you can't opt out from one or the other. So what it therefore means, that's my comment I'm making, is that when the SecDef says, look, yes, we've delegated the responsibility to this fellow, and this fellow should be subjected. There's consequence management that has to be effected, but the fellow who are affected by it are in the defense environment, and therefore we couldn't effect it ourselves. So it means that we must then look at what operational efficiency was the motivation for the authority to be delegated to the defense environment. This then takes me to Treasury Regulations 16A 4.1 that says procurement, as what you call supply chain management must result within CFO, but in the case of the department, it results within the logistics environment. And the supply chain is the area that has the majority of the audit queries. It's the same area where there is minimal progress in dealing with the audit plans, where the risk is high. Now, how do I balance, sitting where I am, the issue that the Act or the regulations require that SCM must be, it's by law, within the CFO, but for the choosing of the department is somewhere else. In area where it's out of sight, well, not necessarily out of sight, where it's difficult. You can't, in fact, consequence a management. Could they not have been an area where, even as you do that, but the CFO remains the umbrella, and they can deploy certain people in the BAC structures that they can hold to account, civilians that they can hold to account. That's one part. And then the second part, because those what you call procurement bodies, supply chain bodies, are not 100% uniform. There are civilians within that environment, but we don't hear those civilians being held to account. So I trying to understand whether are we not hiding behind deliberately? I mean, is the department or the accounting officer not hiding behind the issue that this is the area of the chief of the defense force, and abdicating her responsibility in terms of ensuring consequence management? So I'm saying that's the area that has not been, in my view, investigated, but it required the minister to really zoom into it and say, indeed, in the first place, okay, we understand is defense is a force member, but have you disciplined the civilians within that? And I mean, who work with those fellows in the defense force? you know? And then two, have you considered reallocating the responsibility? Because this responsibility can as well be implemented by a civilian, not necessarily by a defense force person, you know, without detracting from any operational efficiencies. And Mr. Mare and the minister is saying this up. Let me take you, Mr. Mare, so that when the minister comes in, is able to deal with some of the issues as well, with your issues as well. Mr. Mare, please unmute yourself. Oh, I think is having a serious problem. Mr. Mare, Brian, is the problem on my side?
Chair, Mr. Murray is unmuted, but then we seem not to be able to hear him because I can see that his mic is on, but now we cannot hear him.
Yes, your network is unstable. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, Minister, can we take you? I know you wanted just to share your perspective on the issues. Over to
you. I thought we should start with this one, that I agree completely that we should not continue to think that simply because it is uniform that the civilians should not take responsibility. We've been discussing this matter round and round in defense. We concluded on two things. One, that the logistics would be trained very formally in skills that are financial, but that within the finance department, somebody will take the responsibility. We've also been speaking since 2021 about looking at financial delegations, starting from a base upwards, so that at any given time, the final say does not rest with the uniform branch, it rests with the secretary who is the accounting officer. Because we've got to go back to why we came up with the concept of a civilian accounting officer, because we wanted to really make sure that the funds, the policies were at all costs under the civilian authority, and therefore that would make it easier for Parliament and for the public to have access and direct control over whatever that the defense was doing. So we're working on that. It may not seem like that, Chair, but we've actually not left the logistics division untouched. You may be aware that there is a new logistics. The new logistics, together with his team, is expected to undergo that financial training so that we can begin to do these things. But I've not been soft on both the SecDev and the CFO, because I think that we cannot run away from that. I completely agreed with the AG and the public protector that even if the minister cannot directly punish or take action against the uniformed members, that we are not completely helpless. And therefore, we have insisted that we want to see proof from the SecDev that they have in fact directed and instructed the chief of the defense to act on his members. So the situation is not completely helpless. So I wanted to say that that matter we are trying to address, because we do not want to continue having these things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, the absence of any other hand, because this was simple an update, on issues that we all know are within us, and we accept the recommendation that you have posted at the end, that we must continue exercising our responsibilities, our responsibility, and as the portfolio committee to ensure that we hold the department to account. I think we'll just leave it at that for now, and with the note that at least the SecDef was in the meeting and they will be responding to some of the issues when we meet with them, why things remain they are, and there's been no noticeable progress in the majority of areas. Out of 239 matters that were identified for actioning, only 19 were implemented, and 65 are reported in process, and 155 not developed or limited progress reported, and then 2 that the chief audit executive is the post that remain vacant. I don't remember this person being appointed since I came into this position. I think it was vacant since from before our time, and it remains vacant. It's not been filled. And I mean, why it's not been filled? We don't understand it. Because if you have this person now appointed, not a uniform person this time, a person appointed, some of these issues, these audit questions, sometimes you wonder if it is not deliberate. Some of these matters would have been dealt with. You would have someone at a senior level enforcing discipline, enforcing the plans, the action plans. It's not there. It's not there. You know, and so it's not, if we say it's not deliberate, I don't know what to call it. Because a person who's supposed to be with the necessary authority, not somebody acting, you know, enforcing that things are actually happening, is not appointed. It's not because there's no money in the department. It's not, there's no, it doesn't show that there's a will to fill the vacancy. Well, so I think that's the concern, because it is in that area, you know, that today we're meeting to say there's been little noticeable progress. It's in that area. So I'm therefore saying that I mean, with the department, with 73 procurement units in the department, especially in areas where there is high risk, I mean, dealing with areas which have high risk, I mean, that's the major issue that I think we should quickly look at. Of course, Minister, we note that there's been some changes in the head of the logistics, but my concern, it doesn't matter whether it's in the uniform or not. Sometimes it matters not. But does the person have the necessary qualification? I mean, in some South African health medical tonton, you know, you will not be a surgeon general if you're not a doctor. So it means that that fellow must be a doctor and a trained somebody who is higher up within the command. So why can't that be the same in the environment that requires finance people? If there's the CFO, why can't you appoint a CFO who's a soldier? If that, I mean, really, and well, look, it's a civilian, well, again, it distorts the civilian issue that you have been speaking about. But I'm saying where is for operational efficiency, but I think we'll do well with an official who's both a soldier and with all the qualifications necessary for him or her to perform the task. So it's not short either side. I think that's where the issue is. And that we've been missing all the time. So I thought I should just make that comment, Minister. Marais, I think was still struggling. I'm not too sure if it's...
No, I think I'm now on Wi-Fi, so maybe you can hear me now.
Okay, yes, we can hear you now.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I'm not quite sure what the minister has answered yet, so my apologies if I repeat something that was already responded to. I share your opinion and your concerns 100%. And we know that these things are repeated year after year. Every time we hear the same things, and it doesn't come to conclusion. My question is obviously, this is all these anomalies that we are dealing with is not something that we can expect from the accounting officer or the SecDev's office to give us that clarification. It has to be from the minister's office, and maybe even from our own side, Chair, whether we should approach the state law legal advisors to say, we sit with this predicament. Yes, in the past, in the old dispensation, the Defence Force was responsible for procurement and for accounting for that and be responsible for the consequences. Now we've got a situation that we know and we have experienced doesn't work. Some civilians might not have the empathy that the soldiers will have or that the uniform leadership will have, and that brings conflict and frustrations. So somehow the minister should come back to us, or we should approach the state law advisors to say, advise us in terms of how we can deal this, and even if that requires an amendment to a legislation so that we can bring the accounting officers and the persons responsible on the correct level. Because by just talking about that and how we will probably deal with it, it's not going to resolve. That civilian level and the uniform level is just too wide, too far apart from each other. And somehow the minister maybe must come back to us with a presentation and say, all of these matters of anomalies, what is her recommendation of how we can deal with that, and to what extent the portfolio committee can then support her in even amendments to legislation, if that is what's required. But we cannot have this as a repetitive thing year after year. But I share your concerns. And also, Chairperson, the one thing that you have mentioned is where we know that they delegate the authorities. But we know that from an accounting point of view, an accountable point of view, sometimes you cannot delegate certain accountability, the responsibilities and mandates. How do we deal with that? And that brings in, the whole thing about, the legality and the validity of this legislation and how we can take it forward. So, that's my comments, but I share your concerns 100%.
Thank you very much. So, Minister, is your hand still up?
Chair, I
Yes,
think what I said was that this is the way we are going. One, the advent
Minister, you are breaking. I can't hear you.
I also can't hear her.
Also can't hear you. All right. The way I look at it, there is really nothing for the AG to elaborate on or to comment on, but they may still want to say one or two things before they part. We'll then deal, after this, we'll then take up the issues of the audit plans with all the departments. Fortunately, we have the Department of Military Veterans immediately after this item. Mr. Mbali, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm covered. Thank you very much.
Covered. Lawrence, anything to say?
No, we covered. Maybe just one last item, if I forgot to mention it specifically, it was covered in the slides, and that is that the Hebron procurement has also been referred to the SIU by the current acting accounting officer for further investigation. Thank you, Chair. That's all from our side. Much appreciated.
No, it's fine. Thank you very much. We'll leave it at that for now, and really thank you for your presentation this afternoon. I'm not chasing you out, but you are free to remain for when we take the next presentation. DMV, the next lot is yours. You have heard what has been said so far, and that you do have an audit, an internal audit capacity that is assisted by consultants, but you have not completed any audit work, that unit. There were still material statements picked up during audit, and therefore it means that you are still very much challenged. And two, that you have a shared audit committee, and but a shared audit committee must, for you to participate in a shared arrangement, you must meet certain requirements. One, you know, the head of treasury must appoint audit. In a case of a shared audit committee, the head of treasury must appoint audit committee members after consultation with the relevant authority. The question is whether the minister was consulted when you participated in the shared what you call arrangement, and whether Treasury was also consulted, because those two must be consulted in the process. And it's been reported again that no process in place to monitor your action plans. And so the department did not take appropriate action to ensure that all action plans developed to address internal control deficiencies in prior year are implemented at the time. So our interest today, is to see that you are indeed implementing the audit action plan. It's not just a list, but we want to see that you are implementing the audit action plan. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning again, and good morning to the Minister, Deputy Minister, and the members of the Portfolio Committee, and also the colleagues from other entities. Chairperson, we've got a presentation here. Maybe let me start by saying, Chairperson, that we have taken note of the comments, your opening remarks with regards to how our document is structured, how we've been reporting in the past, and we will definitely revert back to the original kind of a report. We've got two documents that we have here, which is we thought the presentation would just make it easy to present, and we've also got a spreadsheet which basically highlights some of the area, as you have indicated, Chairperson, what is the problem, what is the finding, and how then, how far are we in terms of addressing that particular finding and who is responsible for that. But for the purposes of this presentation, we will just give a highlight in terms of in the presentation, and then the presenter, Mr. Mushavela Mufamaji, will then explain in terms of where we are with the progress on some of the issues. In the meeting, chairperson and members, I've got my colleagues from the department, senior SMS members, who will then assist when we then need to respond to some of the issues that are being raised by members. Over to you, Sir Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me greet everyone in the House and acknowledge the presence of the Minister and the Deputy Minister, Acting Secretary, and different aspects within the DOD Ministry and the AGSA and my colleagues on the other side. As it has been indicated, that our presentation is going to be very short, but I must indicate that I want just to apologize for the document that was submitted first and the second one, to say the one that they need to concentrate much on is the second one, and we apologize for submitting very late, but it was because of we understand the standard and the way how things should be presented to this portfolio committee forum. My presentation is around the purpose, the outcomes, and the conclusion. But probably before I can go far, let me indicate that our role as internal audit is to collect information from different units or different heads of the units. With the information collected, we then had to populate the action plan to ensure that all managers are able to see what they have committed themselves to. We do follow up time to time just to remind them about their dates that they've agreed upon, the commitment, the time frame, and person responsible. In this presentation, we are intending to appraise the portfolio committee in the presence of the minister and the deputy minister with the progress made by the department to date. The first presentation of the first slide will be a dashboard that we have borrowed from our colleagues AGSA, which speak about what the department were as it was found by the AGSA and where we are after the diagnostic by the AGSA. The ideal is that the department should address all the findings before the new management report can be issued. We are trying our best as managers, as department, to ensure that before the AGSA can issue a new one, we would have addressed the findings that has been identified, because some has been recurring. We don't want recurring findings anymore. But going straight to the dashboard, I'm going to start from the far right, and then later I'll then move to the second slide. But on the far right, let me indicate that we have got governance. From governance, I'm going to be talking about the risk management, internal audit, and audit committee. Starting from risk management, if you look at it, it's in yellow, which is matter of concern. But unfortunately, it might be red soon, basically because of the chairperson who has resigned from that area. And again, with the past two audit committees, quarterly reports, quarterly meetings that we had where there were no reports from the risk management. So in those two, it might also give different indications, but we hope and believe that coming to the next quarter, we will be having those reports. Coming to internal audit, yes, indeed, it has been raised by AGSA. It has also been raised by the Honorable Chairperson in regards to the service provider that has been acquired, to say that so far there is no value for money. We have not received any reports from them, and it becomes a problem to the AGSA to rely on our work if there's no work that we have done. And again, you look at the service provider that is there, which they have not done anything. That is a matter of concern, which then means that that red will always be red. But we are intending to improve from that. You will see how we have explained in the second stanza that we are going to flag out. But going down, you've got an audit committee. The audit committee that we had, the consultations with the ministry was not done, which was a matter of concern. And even the current one that we have, that process was not followed. That is why it's in red. And the other thing was that the meetings, the quarterly meetings that were supposed to happen could not happen because we didn't have audit committee at that time. But now we do have, unfortunately, the process was not followed, but we hope in the next coming audit committee, because it's ending, we will be able to do the right thing, consulting the executive authority. Going to the next one, which is financial and performance management. We have got a proper records keeping. Under proper records keepings, there are minutes that were requested that we could not provide. But that is also because of the collapse of structures that we used to have, where the unit will have meetings, the branch will have meetings, the program will have meetings, and they will feed it to strategic planning. But unfortunately, most of the things has collapsed. But we are hoping and believe that through the response that we have indicated to our second stanza, most of the things will be done correctly, because a number of managers have returned back. I might not be the right person to indicate that to this gathering, but I hope the executive will be able to announce that. But we are happy for the intervention. Going down, there's a process and reconciliation control that has remained a risk because nothing much has been done. Regular reporting, quarterly reports has not been presented the way how we want, basically because of the collapse of the structural. In other words, the structure that we have mostly has collapsed. Therefore, it also affects our reporting. We then look at the compliance and monitoring. Even that one, we have not been complying in a number of things. It can be treasury regulation, it can be PFMA. We have been found wanting to those things. IT system controls, yes, I can report to say that there's still a challenge, but at least there was an improvement that was made. If you go to the leadership, on the leadership side, we've got the effective leadership culture. I must indicate that since there's been an intervention from the ministry, we hope that will improve. The oversight responsibilities, as we have indicated, was that the sharing arrangement of the audit committee was not done properly, which therefore we are intending to change that status. We then go to HR management. HR management, there were a number of officials that were suspended. We spoke about the organizational structure, which AGSA has also attached to that. Appointments, number of appointments that has not been made, vacant posts. We then look at the issue that was also raised by the AGSA concerning the appointment that we made without HR screening those officials or looking at their qualifications. We are still battling to that. Performance management and assessment, that is still there are still other members that has not been assessed. We also have employee benefits in the key positions. So those are some of the things that we have noted. But if you look down to our next stanza, you will realize that we have indicated how we are going to address those issues. Policy and procedures, yes, there are still policies that still need to be reviewed and also to be approved. And we then go to audit action plan. Audit action plan, previously it was reported that the management report were submitted to the department. However, there were a number of findings that were not having a management response, which therefore create a space where managers could not commit themselves. There was no person responsible and there was no date committed. And we have rectified that now, and we are saying come the next sitting or next meeting, we will be having those the report which reflects the person responsible and the action plan that has been taken and the time frame that will be allocated for that particular officials. So coming to the supply chain, yes, it's a matter of concern indeed. Unfortunately, that probably might come to red because number of issues that has been done so far, procedures were not really followed. So in the previous one that we have raised, we are still trying to address that, but it is still a challenge. Coming to the next stanza, I must indicate that we had, in our last management report, we had 89 findings, and in that 89 findings, 50 were for finance, and 10 were corporate services, CES were 18, and ESM were 3, and internal audit were 8. Please do not read too much of this because this still needs to be corrected. In that finance, we are saying...
So what do you say if you ask us not to read too much into this?
Saying,
sorry, in other words, what value must we attach to this presentation?
Okay, sorry, Honorable. I was just saying that the implementation status, it has got some deficiency in terms of numbers. Hence, I'm trying to correct the numbers with what I'm reading with my document that I'm having. So the chart that you see where it says Consolidated Audit Action Plan 21-22, please do not consider that because at finance, you could see that it is green, and that is not a true reflection of what it should depict from these particular presentations. My apology to that.
But why must I ask you to continue the presentation if what is put before us and we have it in copy is not what you are saying it verbally?
Okay, the report that I've submitted, it has got a dashboard, that is number 1. And the second one, it has got audit action plan. It doesn't have this implementation status. Hence, I'm saying that you should not consider this one. This one was submitted on the 1st. That was submitted, which I said I would want to distance myself from this. Hence, I'm providing the corrections, Chair.
Okay.
Should I continue, Chair?
Yes, please continue.
Thank you, Honorable. Yes, I was indicating that in terms of the implemented, we have 20 in the finance and 39 in progress. And the ones that are not implemented, there are 17. And we also have internal audit, we had 8, 4 has been implemented and 4 has not been implemented. In the ESM, we've got 3 that all have been implemented. And under SES, there are numbers that have been recarried from previously. We have got 18, which 4 have not been implemented, and the rest are in progress. And under corporate service, we have got 10, and 4 has been implemented, and 3 are in progress, and the other 3 are not implemented. So that is the picture around the implementation status. But when we go down to the other audit action plan, where I've indicated in writing, if you can, Jabati, if you can move to the, no, not this one. The other one that was submitted. Okay, Chair, the last audit action plan that was submitted, it has got the description of the audit findings. It has got the root cause. It also have the person responsible, and it also have the time allocated, and it also have the progress report. Now, I'm going to talk about the one that have not been addressed, but the one that have been addressed, probably because of time, I will not want to talk about it if the chair allowed me to do so.
Yes, you are allowed. They will be in green. You'll be color-coded green. Okay, sure.
From number 1 to number 15, you will have the number
is it
1.
Is it possible to reduce the slide so that we can see it till the end? It's not possible. Okay, it's not possible. It's not going to be possible. Okay, it's meant you must move the thing then.
From number 1 to 10, we have number 2, which is a disagreement misstatement. Understatement of payables not recognized. That is still under investigation. We also have number 6 that talks about irregular expenditure not completed. It's still under investigation. We then have number 7, irregular expenditure understated, which is also still under investigation. But when we go to number 9, it talks about fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Still, that one.
Your thing is not moving, so we don't know. We can't see what is number 9 and what is number 8.
Okay. Okay, number 9, it talks about fruitless and wasteful expenditure not investigated. Right. Yeah, it says fruitless and wasteful expenditure not investigated. So that is number 9. We are saying even that one, up to now, the department seems to be battling to finalize that. When you go to number 10, disciplinary steps against officials that permitted irregular expenditure, few have been, steps has been taken against very few, but the rest of the people have not been. So therefore, it's still ongoing. That process has not been finalized. Hence, we have indicated in that report. Number 11, expenditure incurred for emergency housing without prior verification. Even this one, we are saying it's still under investigation. We have not finalized that. We hope to be finalized before the end of financial year. Number 13, it talks about the disagreement misstatement payment for operating lease. Here, money was paid to DPW. However, there was an amount that was recorded. The two departments had a meeting where glitches in the TPW system were identified that caused the overpayment. A credit note was issued for overpayment. As a result, the department will be credited in future. Number 15, it talks about the disagreement misstatement, payment for skills development, study assistant for surface excavation has been classified as transfer payment compensation. So this is around the classification, which it still needs to be done. When it's done, it will have to be corrected by the financial statement. The number 18 talks about scope limitations. This is where it talks about the transaction in the suspense account not provided for audit. This is the information that we believe that it's within the department. However, this was not submitted during the time of audit. So auditors could not confirm whether the transaction has been corrected or classified, which then it's still a matter of concern. When we go to number 28, it talks about the disagreement misstatement, employee benefits, performance bonus liability. Here, the department is saying that the bonus were not paid, but however, the pay progression was made available to the officials, which was also creating a problem with how the AGSA has phrased the matter, which then says there's still a further engagement with the AGSA. The other two that I did not talk about, if you can pardon me there, which is 26 and 27, it talks about key employees not complete and identified in the disclosure of close family members. Here, members were requested to provide information which regards to the disclosure of close family members, which was not done. So that is still ongoing and it has created a problem. But we believe that in the next meeting, we'll be able to provide a better response with that effect. Number 30 talks about the irregular expenditure not disclosed as per the Spaceman financial statement. Even this one has also been raised by the audit committee. And we believe that this will be attended as a matter of urgency so that this investigation can be concluded. Number 31, it's a regular expenditure understated, which is still to be completed. We also have number 37, invalid HAPI letters. The HAPI letters were issued, but it was noted that those HAPI letters were not valid because they lack some elements which the department are still in the process to rectify that. The completeness of housing schedule, number 38, still even that, it still needs to be addressed as it stands because it has not been completed. Number 41, 41 talks about the suspense account not cleared, and 42 talks about the approved funding of skills development and empowerment initiative and study program for military veterans policies. Even this one has not been rectified. We have requested the managers to provide information, but the information, it seems to be dragging its feet to arrive to our office. The other one is around the determination test into the funding as per the public protector report have not instituted within 30 days of report. There are reports that were made against the department, which the department had to implement, has not been done so far, which is still a matter of concern. To 46 to 60, we have other findings that has not been committed, just like number 47 has not been committed, number 46 has not been committed, which is a matter of concern. We've raised that before in our gathering. However, the response seems to be dragging its feet again to our office. Even the number 48 findings, still the same. And number 50, the sole supplier deviation is still a problem. And also the control deficiency contract, the SLA, not in place for approved contracts. We are still waiting for the response to that effect. A non-compliance deviation, not just justifiable. Number 52, it talks about deviation, which is not justifiable. We are still waiting for that respond. And the number 53, it talks about the BBE within 30 days of approval of the 2021 annual report. That is still in progress. We were not complying there. Number 54, it talks about organizational structure. It is known that this has been a recurring finding. It has been coming time and again. Nothing has been done so far. We then goes to number 55, public service regulation as members of senior management, annual financial disclosures. Even this one, we have not concluded this because the report has not come forth, which affects the senior managers in regards to public service regulations. Number 56, non-compliance performance agreement not signed within 3 months. No evidence that developed the gaps identified have been included in the performance development plan. So there are challenges when it comes to performance agreement. That has not been resolved. It's still a matter of concern. We then go to 57. It talks about the non-compliance also, employee conducting businesses with the state. Other officials has been found wanting because they are implicated in this finding. However, the reason for that has not been given to us, and no steps has been taken against those individuals. We then go to number 58, non-compliance. Here it talks about requirement of pre-appointment screening. I also spoke about it in the dashboard where members or officials has been appointed without being screened, which then becomes a problem because it creates a wrong alignment. It also creates dysfunctioning of the unit. Number 60, it talks about the deficiency, internal audit incapacity. I've also spoke about that. Number 61, it also talks about the assessment that's supposed to happen when the internal audit unit has spent 5 years, or the department has spent 5 years with the unit, which is internal audit and risk in our department. So there's an assessment that needs to be conducted, which has not been conducted so far. But we are saying in terms of action plan, the department or the unit, we have submitted our proposal or our submission to ensure that there's a budget that has been secured for the next financial year so that we can have this assessment. The 62, it talks about the share audit committee. I also spoke about these things before. Number 63, it also talks about the charter. The charter could not be signed because at that time we didn't have audit committee, but now that we have got audit committee, those charters has been submitted to the audit committee. In the next coming meeting, it was promised that those charters will be reviewed and signed. Number 64, it also talks about the quarterly report that was supposed to be submitted to the audit committee. It was not done basically because we didn't have the audit committee at that time. But now that we have the previous audit committee that we had, reports were submitted. But I must indicate that in terms of internal audit, we could not submit any report, but basically because of the service provider that we have contracted with has not done any work as I've indicated in the first stanza. The next one talks about the non-compliance with Treasury regulation. Appointment of the audit committee members were not made in consultation with the relevant executive authority. I've also spoke about this, which the AGS also spoke about it. We hope and believe that the next coming we will be able to address it in an effective manner and adequately so. And number 66, it also talks about the no evidence suggests that the audit committee have overseen the risk. Yes, indeed, there was none at that time because there was no audit committee. But now that we have audit committee, the reports as the risk has indicated that in the next coming meeting, the risk management will be able to provide those reports and the audit committee will be able to look at those reports. In the 67 framework for strategic and annual performance plan, communication of the audit findings, those has been implemented. 68 and 69, there is an implementation to that effect. The next one that we'll also talk about that seems to be is number 81. If you can go to number 81, it says disagreement misstatement in operation list disclosure. This is still a matter of concern that needs to be addressed. So far, we have not get the response to that effect. And the policy have not been reviewed and approved. Yeah, there are a number of policies that has not been approved. But however, there are also policies that have been submitted for approval, but others still need to be reviewed. So that is still a problem. 83, it talks about the approved debt policy and understanding of receivables. This has not been done, it's still in progress. And 84, it talks about segregation of duties. This, it's also created by not having a proper structure. And other peoples have been moved to the different fields, which also create a problem in terms of segregation of duties. And 85 talks about reconciliation. That reconciliation so far has not been done to that effect. AG has raised that, though management seems to have a different view, but it was noted that those reconciliation need to be done. 89, it's also, 86 is also in progress. 87 is also in progress. 88 is still in progress. And 89, steering committee meetings and collaboration with regards to the setting of targets with Department of Human. There are a number of meetings that have been recorded where the Department of Military Veterans and the Human Settlement will have. However, in those meetings, we are supposed to get the minutes. We are supposed to have a representative, but we found wanting because some of these things has not been supported to that effect, which also affect the indicators. Hence, they said during the audit the indicators for military veterans provided were newly built houses. And it was noted that there is no evidence that target for 2021 performance year was set in collaboration with human resources, with human settlement. So that is around the planning. It is still in progress, but the solution has not been received so far. Honorable Chair, I want to believe that I've tried to summarize what I can, and I will also want to apologize where I've omitted, but my colleagues will be able to add or to share if I've omitted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think your presentation, it's easy to follow, is user-friendly. And I'm sure even in the areas where you say you needed to do some adjustment as you speak, I'm sure you will be in a position to factor that in and then send a final product, that incorporates the additions that you made or the corrections that you made this afternoon. There weren't too many. I think now I take hands. Now take hands. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. I'll get the name. All right. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mushavelim. Mushavelim. All right, Mushavelim has made a presentation. Colleagues, any comment? Mr. Murray?
Thank you very much, Chair. Really concerning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, fine. I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Thank you. A really concerning report, but much appreciated. I see a lot of the root causes makes reference to management. So it seems like there's a management problem, if I can use that phrase, maybe for a lack of a better word. Can I ask, maybe this is just for my own clarity, is the DG in the meeting, Chair, or have I missed that in the beginning? Whether the DG is here, and if not, why not? So I'm just that I don't pose a question to her and she's not in the meeting.
All right, continue. The minister is in the meeting. She will then give us. Yeah, the DG is not in the meeting.
Okay. Okay. Can I ask, because this is clearly a reference to management and a concern that we have got. Can I just ask quickly two issues? How many of our management have been put on suspension maybe, or for disciplinary? For how long? I know that there's a few that has been put on suspension. And if we can just ask, what is the progress in that regard? And then whether there are any actions by the minister against the DG at this stage, because of many things, maybe amongst others that has been mentioned here. And what is the outcome, or at least when can we expect an outcome? Because this department is in serious need of normalization, get it into stiller and calmer waters. Because if there's a problem amongst management and there's outstanding disciplinary cases, then you can't expect from people lower in the hierarchy to carry the burden that the management is actually responsible for. That's my main question, Chair. And with that, we can move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Shalembe, I'm sorry. Thanks, Mr. Murray.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the presentation as presented. Chairperson, you see, just a concern. I think you raised a concern at the beginning of the meeting. You know, I mean, the number of presentations that were submitted to us, and the last one was submitted, I mean, early this morning. Chairperson, my concern is that, well, DMV, I mean, it's a small department if I compare, I mean, with other departments. You know, I mean, to experience such, I mean, it becomes, you know, I mean, concerning. Hopefully, maybe we'll get, I mean, the problems. Why, I mean, we had to receive, I mean, this presentation like that. I mean, then to Chairperson, you know, it is a very concerning Chairperson that, I mean, the department, I mean, because, I mean, I'm not getting the clear picture. How are they going to, what's the time frame to ensure, I mean, that the employment of consultant, I mean, is stopped? Because coming again, you heard that, I mean, they will address the issue of the consultant. Maybe if I can get a clear time frame, when are we going to see, I mean, these consultants not being, I mean, employed, because they are taking a lot of money from the department. And then, Chairperson, I didn't get the clear picture. I think Maria has touched on that one, the issue of the staff on suspension. But I noticed that, I mean, the AG has raised the issue of the 4 senior staff people who are on suspension for years now. And, you know, I don't know how can they satisfy me that, I mean, this matter will be addressed and be dusted, because it's like it's a report that it is being attended. And how much, I mean, it's costing the department to have these people, I mean, getting paid whilst they are not doing any job. If maybe you can give also the clarity, I saw they spoke about, well, our staff establishment as DMV, we have say about 169, I mean, posts is supposed to be like 169, I mean, employed of people. Whereas, I mean, there is sort of like a shortage of 43. I didn't get well, Chairperson, the 43, as I heard about 43 contractors. I'm trying to get 43 individuals or 43 contractors that, I mean, is composed of that 25%. And then, Chairperson, I'm trying to find out, why do we need to have a suspense account? Because to me, I mean, that suspense account now, it's like now, I mean, people are doing their own things. And now we do not have any supporting document. Chair, even if you go to a storeroom, you cannot just go and take the stuff without, I mean, a requisition, I mean, that you are doing this. But it seems now that suspense account is causing a damage to the department. How can we say they cannot find, I mean, the supporting documents? Now we need to address that. If they don't find those supporting documents, what's going to happen now? This, I mean, what has been, I mean, it's like now corruption was being done, I mean, without, I mean, having any fear, because now you can, I'm against, I mean, to that suspense account, unless if it is approved by the National Treasury. If maybe they can convince me, why do we need a suspense account? And I mean, the last one, Chairperson, is the issue, I mean, you know, to say, I mean, under financial and performance management, no proper recording because of, I mean, I think there are some structures that has collapsed. I'm trying to find out, I mean, which are those structures that has collapsed, I mean, that has made it difficult now to have the proper recordings and no information being available. Now, thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Those were the only hands. Can we ask you, Mr. Mushevalam, to deal with the responses? Mushavelam.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. There are two issues that I'm just going to quickly probably deal with it, and the rest, I'm sure my colleagues will be able to do that. Number one, it's around the last one that was just mentioned, the structural collapse. Here we are referring to the meetings that we'll normally have, where you've got MENCO, you've got EXCO, you've got program 1, program 2, program 3, having their own meetings. That becomes the feeder to the strategic planning. And quarterly, they will then have to consolidate all those things. It is unfortunate that most of the structures, they are no longer sitting as it's supposed to be, like EXCO. For the past, 2 years or so, 3, we never had EXCO. Yes, in terms of MANCO, we'll have MANCO there and there, but at times it will be just a name that says it's a MANCO, but you look at the content, it's not really what's supposed to be discussed in that MANCO, or the number of people that are supposed to be attending that MANCO. You then question the status or the quorum. That is about the structural collapse. Secondly, it's about the presentation that was submitted late. We really apologize for that, but I must indicate that this was also caused because of my laptop, which was missing from Friday. In other words, I got hijacked on Friday, and that on its own, everything that was in my laptop, my USB, external hard drive, everything, my work was in that, and it was taken away. So hence, I could not provide the information that was requested at that time. This is the only that I managed to rescue, and I really apologized for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There are questions that would be at the level of the minister, like the issues on suspension and that of the DG. I think they're above the pay grade of Mushavelam. Minister, or the deputy minister?
The last time I checked, the minister was in the meeting. I'm not sure if connectivity on her side has collapsed or what. Just checking.
Yes, I thought so too.
No, she's still there. She's still there.
She's still in the meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe she remains logged on. She's probably attending to some other thing. It looks as though her attention is thrown away.
Chair?
Yes, Minister?
Yeah, no, I was having connectivity problems here.
Oh, I saw.
But I did get the questions from Mr. Mare. As a matter of fact, yes, we approached the presidency in terms of the law because the president signs off on the contract late last year, to enable us to put the DG of DMV on suspension, because we clearly had reached a point where communication was difficult. and so on and so forth. So yes, indeed, the DG is not on the platform or in this meeting because she is on suspension. We will come back to the committee on who will act, because if you remember well, all the senior members of staff, the DDGs, were suspended also. We had instructed the DG since early last year, when we realized that the charges for the 4 suspended members were not on, to return those members back to work or to get on with the DCs. We have today instructed that those 4 members be back at work. We are also aware that after the DG was suspended and knew that she was being suspended, she suspended more people. We have enabled them to come back to work. We are not saying everybody is not guilty or guilty. We're saying that we cannot be paying for people who are staying at home. I must also say that the same instruction to the DG DMV was given to the SecDef and to the Chief Sandap last year for all those members who have spent years on suspension, staying home, earning, and people acting and getting acting allowances. We did give that instruction for those people to come back, face the music in here, or get those charges dismissed and allow people to work if we do not have tangible charges against them. We therefore want to say that I have heard, just before I had some problems with my network again, that the DMV has a suspense account. Part of the problems that we had was that there was a complete blackout around the issues of finance. When we were having an interaction with the AG's office this week, we learned that in fact there was even a virement of 160 million that neither the DM or myself had been made aware of. So we've had problems there. This morning we addressed the staff, and we can only hope that from now onwards we will pick up the department. We will begin to rebuild the department and return the services back to the people. So we will be making an announcement as to who will act in the place of the DG. Chair, I think I might have missed a lot of the discussions because I struggled to get back on. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Minister. No, I'm happy with the action you have taken, that you either charge and discipline those on suspension, especially long protracted suspension, or you bring them back. I'm both in the defense force and in the DMV, because people have remained on suspension for inordinately long period, proving that there was no agency in the first place, and that there may be no case against them. If somebody who has just decided that I don't like you, go and sit at home, leading to, and the fellow who does that doesn't care that we now have to pay two people to do the job of one person, because they have other people is at home drawing his or her monthly salary. So I'm happy with your action. I hope when we interact with the defense force or the Department of Defense, we will get the progress report in that regard as to how many people have been returned back at work. And we are not saying, as we are correctly pointed out, there are no issues against them, but if there are issues and must be charged and action taken against them as speedily as possible. No, thank you very much for that, Minister. We are fine with it. So, Mr. Murray, the information is that the DJ is on suspension till further notice. So we would just leave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes. Colleagues, I think the issue of 3 presentations, I explained it in the beginning, but the presentation that was presented was more user-friendly and easy to even follow it up during our time. Let me just thank the Minister and the DM and the team from their department. Thank all the officials from the other entities who came to be with us this afternoon. And also want to thank the Office of the Auditor General for always giving us, hand-holding us on areas and making our work of oversight much easier because issues are unpacked and brought to our attention. Thank you very much, Mbali, Lawrence, and please convey our appreciation once again to the Auditor General. Colleagues, we only have the minutes to deal with. I thought I should just thank all this, thank everyone, including the senior government officials in the meeting. They are free to leave at any time they wish to. We can now move to the next item, the minutes. Are there any minutes, Brian?
Yes, Chair.
Please, how many sets?
2 sets, Chair.
2 sets. Can we dispose of them?
All right.
Thank you. So we met to consider and adopt the program. Was that the only item?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. It's on the 7th of December. Actually, it was not a programmed meeting, but was simply called to consider That's correct.
I remember that. All right, just go. This is the attendance register. You just finished the attendance, and then we go to the minutes. Thank you very much. So page 2, yes. Colleagues, are there any comments, not comments, corrections to be effected? There be no corrections. Can I get a mover and a seconder?
Mafanya moves.
Mafanya moves, and they're seconded by?
I second, Honorable Chair.
Mtembu, thank you very much, Mtembu. Can we move to the second set? Second set, dealing with the second and third quarterly reports of DMV, BRRR, and recommendations, as well as the minutes. Can just finish the attendance record. This is the attendance, just go down until the end, okay? Thank you, this is page 2. Page 3. Page 4. And page 5. Colleagues, are there any corrections? In fact, there being none, can I get someone moving? Can I get someone moving the minutes?
I move. I move.
Shalembe moves, seconded by
Mafanya seconds.
Afanya seconds. Thank you very much, colleagues. Let me thank all of you, colleagues. I know we've gone over time for all the work that we've accomplished this afternoon, and then wish you well as you attend to other commitments. The meeting stands adjourned.